And we are back. Now that things have settled down a bit at home, I've established a daily flow and gotten used to these new surroundings. I'm finding more time to relax and play the odd video game, which is great. And this Disney kart racer title for iPad recently caught my eye, so I figured I would give it a go. Kart racing games remind me a lot of when I was much younger, and my father and I would play the original Mario Kart game for SNES after I finished all my schoolwork. And then later on, during the Nintendo 64 generation, we would have these epic battles in Mario Kart 64's battle mode. Fond memories. But today we are looking at this Disney kart racer, which is called Disney Speedstorm. I'm playing it on my M3 iPad Pro with Xbox controller, as you can see. I have only played for about an hour, maybe two, but I think it's quite fun. Certainly one of the best kart racing titles on the App Store currently, and maybe that is largely due to it feeling very similar to Mario Kart, only with popular Disney characters and environments. The controller support is excellent, both for gameplay and menu navigation. I feel it's important to mention menu navigation because there's a large number of titles on the App Store that have good controller support for controlling in-game elements, but then no support or limited support when navigating menus. So I'm happy to report that this title does offer full support, regardless of what you're doing in the game, which is likely due to the fact that the game was developed not just for mobile, but also for PC and console, meaning the developers probably had controller support in mind from the get-go. That said, though, it is another title on the App Store that does not explicitly indicate controller support, which really irks me. Something that I've mentioned before. Apple needs to start cracking down on this because it affects both the gamers who might be looking specifically for games with controller support, as well as the game developers whose games might not be downloaded as frequently because controller support is not clearly indicated on the App Store. If Apple made controller support indication a required data field for all games uploaded to the App Store, we would not have this issue. Moving on to graphics now. They are great. Environments are really fun, colorful, filled with life. I'm playing the game on an M3 iPad Pro, which I already mentioned. That may make some difference to the quality. I'm not really sure. Seems unlikely, though. I forgot to check if there were graphics settings, but whatever the game defaulted to for me on my iPad, it looks and plays great. I did not experience any lag or dropped frames or stutters or anything like that. It felt very smooth. It's likely playing at 60 FPS, possibly dynamic. The game size is also not too large, which is appreciated at just under 4 gig. I did not check my other devices, but I suspect that the game is 4 gig regardless of the device you download it on. It is free to play, but it does have in-app purchases. One thing you can always rely on in the App Store for free-to-play games is what I suspect are young people leaving poor reviews and complaining about the monetizations. These people need to get their heads out of their ass. It takes a lot of work by many people to design, code, market, support these games, not to mention having to pay salaries and licensing and office space and utilities and all the rest. People have to get paid. There needs to be monetization. In the case of Disney Speedstorm, monetization is not all that unique from other similar titles. There are tokens you can purchase to get customizations, there's a season pass, I think, and various other packs that you can unlock certain Disney characters and carts and whatever else. Pretty standard stuff. And though it should go without saying, all of it is optional. Now, speaking to the difficulty of play, when I began, I thought it was much too easy because I was winning every single race without much difficulty. But once you get past the initial few races that are meant to introduce you to the game and its mechanics, the difficulty does seem to ramp up. All of a sudden, I found myself fighting to stay in the top 3 spots, which I think is where the difficulty needs to remain. I did not check the settings to see if there was a difficulty option or if the game just scales with your gameplay. I'm not really sure, but whatever it defaulted to for me, it felt right. The controls feel great as well. If you've played kart racers before, then there is nothing new here. You should be able to just pick up and play like any similar kart racing title. I did not try touch controls, nor do I ever plan on using touch controls in any games I ever play. Either the game supports controllers or I do not play the game. Simple as that. And certainly in a game like this where you need to make micro movements and twitch reactions while navigating fast-paced environments, I would not want to rely on touch controls. Overall, definitely a game to pick up, especially if you enjoy racing titles and more specifically kart racers. It seems to be getting a lot of regular updates as well, which is always good news for the longevity of the title. On to another note, I was watching a few videos on YouTube the other day that were discussing the anticipated release of the Nintendo Switch 2. I was lucky enough to have the original Nintendo Switch and then later on the Nintendo Switch Lite, both of which I eventually sold, however. The unique qualities of the Switch devices quickly wore off, I found, and I started to see them more as gimmicks. If I wanted to play something mobile, I would use a controller and my iPad. And if I wanted to play something with more depth, I would play on a console with larger and higher quality game libraries and more powerful hardware. Even though Nintendo holds a special place for me, given that I grew up with their hardware and their IPs, today Nintendo's consoles make very little sense to me. They refuse to build hardware that matches the capabilities of Sony and Microsoft's consoles, meaning most of the AA and AAA third-party titles are not launching on their platforms, and the ones that do tend to struggle to perform. There are really only two reasons to purchase Nintendo consoles today, in my opinion. One is for their on-the-go gaming capabilities, and the other is for their first-party titles. It's the second reason that I think Nintendo is still surviving in the console space, honestly. If it were not for their popular first-party titles, their consoles would certainly be failing, especially given the widespread availability of mobile gaming today. Everyone has a device in their pockets with more capability than Nintendo's consoles. Personally, and from a business perspective, I think Nintendo should get out of hardware. If Nintendo were to partner up with Apple, for example, to bring their first-party titles to the app stores, they would see significant growth, both within existing demographics and new demographics, given the pervasiveness of Apple's hardware and popularity of Nintendo's titles. Perhaps Nintendo can still make peripherals for those platforms, but when it comes to the hardware they need to run their IPs, again, personally, I think they should leverage existing systems. And their competition would benefit from this as well, both Sony and Microsoft. They should also start bringing their IPs to these other popular mobile systems. I know they are slowly doing so with cloud gaming, but I don't think that is sufficient. If you consider how many people there are that own devices capable of running cloud gaming, that live somewhere with available networks with sufficient throughput, and can actually afford those services, especially while on the go, because you require unlimited data plans, the numbers are not large. I tried cloud gaming at home over Wi-Fi a couple months back, and it was terrible, especially if you're playing anything that requires low latency. So for 99.999% of gamers, games need to be local. Cloud gaming is just, it's not there yet. Anyways, bit of a rant there. All this is to say that I think these large game studios need to start considering bringing their big IPs to existing mobile platforms. Nintendo would especially benefit from this due to their diverse audiences, and it would free them from the shackles of their own hardware. Anyways, that is it for this one. See you later.